I'm really pleased to introduce Dame Vivian Hunt, who's managing partner of McKinsey, and she is co-author of the McKinsey Global Institute's recent report looking at the future of women at work, subtitled Transitions in the Age of Automation. This is clearly a major complicating factor in trying to reduce the gender gap. And we've got a little conversational sort of slot here. Thank you very much, Vivian. Could you tell us what were some of the key insights of this report?
Well,
and was there anything very surprising in it?
Well, we know for sure that the biggest thing happening to all economies is the impact of technology, whether that's enabling your business, whether that's the objective of your business, or it's just a tool, resource, skills that you use. But it's impacting different jobs differently. And so in a sense of trying to look at the jobs created and jobs lost because of technology, we know that it's going to impact 1 in 4 women, 1 in 4 jobs. It's a much larger quantum than we thought. We know that digital and technology enablement is affecting all jobs, but 1 out of 4 means literally every single person in this room will either need to change roles or have more than 50% of the content of their jobs changed. Now, when you think about that in a service economy, say your experience flying out of an airport or working, if you've ever been in France, at those digital McDonald's tills, sometimes it's to the great convenience and delight of the end consumer or to a business-to-business trade. But a job has changed there. A skill set has disappeared or moved. But it's a much higher quantum than we thought. Oh. The second thing that we found that was very surprising is that work is very gendered. We would all like to live in a perfect world of 50-50 parity, men, women, boys, and girls, whatever your affiliation, equal access to every opportunity. But right now, work is very gendered. And because of that, the roles that are occupied by women today are more vulnerable to technology substitution and change. So if you think about the healthcare services sector or the retail services sector, call center or customer services jobs, there's a reason that every chatbot in banking is a woman. It's because 70% of the jobs in service, sales and service reply in financial services in Europe are held by women. So having your chatbot be a female isn't necessarily bias, it's also the pattern. But what it means is that jobs that are held by women will be disproportionately affected by the technology impact. So both of those things surprised us.
Right. So, I would have thought it's manufacturing that's going to be really hit, and that's mostly men. So you're finding that actually services is even bigger.
The quantum is the same, is what I would say. It's 1 out of 4 men, 1 out of 4 women, but the proportion of the technology substitution is higher. So for sure, in manufacturing, men will be disproportionately hit. That's a great example. But in retail service, customer service, women will be disproportionately hit.
Okay, and so what should women do? And will men take women's jobs? Will women take men's jobs? In this new world of, automation, is there something dynamic and complex going on at all?
I think the new thought is that it's about the skill sets and leadership attributes, not necessarily about a job title. If we had a room full of Generation Z and post-millennials, they'd tell you it's about the skills they want to learn and capabilities they have, not the job they want to seek or just the companies they want to work for. And that's true in our analysis as well. When you look at it as skill sets, what you see is that you want to add skills around digital analytics automation to your current skill set so that you're reskilled and more ready for work. And all workers, male and female, need to do that. But the challenge for women is a bit bigger, because if women don't reskill around technology, the likelihood that they will plateau or indeed move backwards is significantly higher. So the cost, if you will, for not being in leadership roles, for not being in more productive tech-enabled functions, and for not having more flexible working circumstances means that women risk being left behind. So like everything in life, it's happening for the population, men and women. But also, like some things in life, there'll be a disproportionate burden carried by women if we don't compensate for that as companies and indeed as government.
And so you mentioned education, particularly in sort of technology and sort of maths and engineering topics and things. So what should women be doing? What should we be doing to enable this transition, make this transition more?
Again, the steps and lessons for men and women are the same, but but women, it's a must-have as opposed to a nice-to-have. First is reskilling, access to and working on roles that allow them to retrain and reskill, adding technology and digitization to different roles. The patterns were the same in developed as well as emerging markets, but they were just simply different skill sets. So, for example, in an India or a China, almost any additional education and digital skills, even basic use of an iPad, adds to your employability. The technology bar, if you will, in the UK is a little higher, but the message for women is the same: retraining and reskilling at a very high rate across all jobs. And employers, and indeed governments as employers, can play a big role in making that available. The second is women have restrictions on their flexibility and mobility. Very often, if you're the second income in a family, your job or employment does not determine where the family lives. You might need to stay near family for care responsibilities, older relatives, younger relatives. You may not be the decision maker who decides if and when and how your family moves. So recognizing that women are less mobile and often have less flexibility. But again, and we can talk about this in the panel that will follow, there are many things that employers and organizations can do to add more flexibility to work. I'll give you an example. If we were having a training program from 6 to 7 today, for some of our colleagues, it would be hard to be at that session because they might have care or home responsibilities, men or women, but disproportionately women. So doing it at a different time and delivered in a different way will help women. The last piece is about access to technology. Now, in India or China, that could literally be as literal as access to the telephone. Very often, if a household just has one telephone, it's disproportionately controlled by the male head of household, or simply the fact that women have 33% less access to the internet in many large developing economies. Now, in the UK, basic technology, basic tools, we all have mobile, if not 2 or 3 devices in our bags. The issue there is about technology training and access to the higher level skills. So this notion of taking technical degrees, further education academies, flexible certificates, adding skills to your skills while you're still working is another way that women can add technology to their jobs and increase their access to technology without necessarily falling behind in their current employment or, frankly, giving up the domestic responsibilities that all of us have to be attentive to.
Okay. Are there some countries that are affected more than others? I mean, is this something you looked at in the report at all?
We did. We started with a cluster of OECD countries and found that the quantum of change was about the same, developed and economies. The big difference is that because many demand-led economies in ASEAN, large, developing, fast growth economies are fast growth. So jobs at almost any skill level, simply learning to use a cash register, an iPad checkout system, basic technologies that we take for granted in many economies, still add value and are still jobs that add value to a household. In developed markets like the UK or the US, the bar is simply higher. Women and men have to have a higher degree of technical sophistication in order to be competitive. Just having a certain degree of even technical A-levels or GCSEs, a little bit of further education or university will not be enough to be competitive in the digital age. You actually have to retrain more deeply, but it's doable in the course of 1, 2, 3 months. It's not an unattainable amount of technology training, but you do have to pause and integrate retraining at scale. You can't simply do short courses or basic digital skills to be competitive. And that makes common sense as well, but it's also true in the data. A little bit of retraining in the UK is not what's needed. It's a much more dramatic addition to women and men's skill sets.
Well, there's been some debate, hasn't there been, particularly talking about the UK now, about education, and that there's been too much focus on attaining university education as opposed to technical skills which are needed. Did you go into that at all? Is this
we didn't look at
have some implications
well,
for that debate?
Well, I think we know two things. One is there are two big fall-offs in interests in technology and sort of STEAM D roles. Obviously around age 12 and then again around age 16. And so we all have a shared interest in addressing that. And if technical paths are, and technical degrees are a path for more women to participate, women and girls to participate in tech education, then that's got to be a very good thing. The UK is already a leader in digitization. And if you will, the ecosystem, now it's what businesses, what jobs, what education do you put on that digital platform that we enjoy in this country? So intervening earlier with technical skills and more technical degrees is absolutely a big lever. And if we focus on it collectively, we can make a big difference for girls and for the country within 10 years. I would also say that building in retraining whilst you're working. You know, this notion of, if you think about Linda Grattan's book, The 100-Year Life, I think this notion of doing things sequentially, education, then work, then retirement or leisure. I think the idea now is we're going to need to be much more modular. One is we're going to need to work longer, just economically in the structure of pensions, but we're also we might want to have some leisure earlier as well, God forbid. But we're also going to have to be learning all the way throughout our careers. And I think the employers, and our data certainly suggests the employers who are most proactive around reskilling have the most flexible workforces. The key, particularly to the UK's competitive advantage over the last 10 years, has been about a technology-enabled, flexible workforce. And with retraining and skills that are portable and some agility, even if you don't have mobility, you can't move geography, you can move professions and hopefully improve things.
Well, is there anything you'd like to add? I think we're coming to the end of our slot that I haven't asked.
Well, I just want the panel to be provocative and challenging, because it's one thing to look at the quantum on paper. It's another thing to live it when you're in a business or leading an organization. The challenge I'd love that private sector, public sector, and third sector organizations think about is how do we actually begin to retrain at scale? Bring learning, professional development and learning right into the core of what we do. It's particularly important for the economy as we grow and become competitive, but it's also particularly important for women so that we not only retain the progress we've made, but build on it.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. That's all we have time.